All right, we are back with Rich Little, and now joining us, Todd Fisher, probably the most interesting man that nobody knows yet. We're going to have you on the show at another time and talk about your life, your Debbie Reynolds' son, your sister's Carrie Fisher, and so we could talk about that some other time. But
sure,
as a producer,
you've got a million stories to tell too.
Yes, dinner with these two, I recommend it. In fact, that's why I wanted to have you both here.
Everybody's invited.
But we did talk about this reality show, and it looks like it is going to become a reality. Tell me why you want to be involved with it.
Well, you guys touched on it earlier. There's a lot of reality shows out there. I mean, every subject is covered, and there are a lot of talent shows are out there. And I think people, get tired of the same old thing. America's got this, America's that. But even going back to the roots of a lot of this, like the Gong Show even, people love watching people try to do things. And it's not always important that you're the best. I mean, not everybody can pull it off like he does. And it's funny when they do, and it's funny when they don't.
Yes.
And, I think that's what he's going for here. And I think that that's worthwhile. You guys also touched on a great subject, which is there aren't that many people today that you can do compared to days gone by.
Right.
I think so. Doing some of the people that we have forgotten about is important. And I think running those film clips while you're seeing someone do an impression is great. When you watch Rich's show here in Vegas, it's a lot of fun to watch because he does the nostalgia and he shows you the clips with these great old stars, and then you see him do it, and then he does it live. And it's a little mind-bending that he still has that recall, but I think we do forget, and the show will allow us to remember some of the greatest people, some of the greatest voices, some of the greatest characters, and done by America or people around the world. And I think that's fun. So we've got a lot of other things that are fun and interesting. Why not that? And he's the king of all of the impersonators. My mother was a great impersonator, and she respected him more than anybody else. He was always the master of that. He has great comedic timing, and make a great host for this show. Yeah. So, I mean, you guys brought it to me. This is his baby, your baby. I just simply said, yeah, why not? So, and why not here in Vegas? Sure. This is the right place.
And we could have young impersonators on doing some of the current people today that have never been done before. That might be interesting too.
I've never seen it done.
Yeah.
I mean, we might be shocked.
Wow. I've been researching it a lot, and on YouTube, there's people out there. There's one gal, she looks to be about 20 years old, and she does a good 30, 40 current stars.
But I would love to see that, because to me, how do you do Ryan Gosling? I mean, it's like,
agree.
Or Justin Bieber. How do you do that?
What do you do?
It's not as obvious, the little idiosyncrasies that these people have. We talked about John Wayne. Everything from his walk to his drawl was so distinctly him. There's very few like that, but they pull it off. It's really quite interesting. I've seen people with various handicaps that are doing it as well. We see little kids this big doing it. I see older folks doing it.
Oh, yeah.
What is the draw? Why is that so fascinating to people that we can be somebody else?
Well, I think if you see a little kid doing John Wayne, kid doesn't really know who John Wayne is. He's just probably seen a couple of movies and, and getting the attitude. And it's just adorable to see somebody young doing that,
Yeah.
But those people, John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart and Bette Davis and Katharine Hepburn, those people did have very distinct,
right?
And we don't have quite that extreme stuff. So I do think you're going to see a lot of people doing the older people, which I love. There's a counterculture out there of young people today that know those people. I have people walk up to me every day. They don't know as much about old movies as I do, which is not easy. And it's just amazing. And I really love that people are in love with that era.
And some of us feel the need to preserve these memories and these incredible talents. I mean, how long until nobody remembers these people, if not for somebody like yourselves championing this effort?
Yeah. Well, the film clips are also something that's so important. He's managed to preserve a lot of his early shows and things. Very important to be able to go back and look at some of that stuff with those people. I love the A-B of that, where you show it now, you show it then. And I think that's important too. Showing the movie that you're doing the bit from
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of fun.
I agree.
So like when someone's doing John Wayne and you show a scene where he's got that funny walk and the tilt and the whole thing, and even if it is a grandma doing it, I mean that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people do impersonations of somebody who's impersonated somebody else. For instance, Dana Carvey's version of President Bush. Not gonna do it. Not gonna.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a
end
lot
up
of
doing Dana Carvey doing Bush, right?
there's a lot of people that do maybe one great impression.
Yeah.
True.
You know, I remember there was an actor called Ed Lauder. He made a lot of movies, played gangsters in movies.
Yeah.
And he did a Montgomery Clift for me that blew me away, but that's the only one he did.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that amazing? So you may find somebody like that, you know, because everybody likes to do impressions. You know, I'll run into people who'll say, well, here's the guy. You finally are seeing the show, and you've been pestering me and doing that awful impression for 20 years, and here he is. Do it for him, and let's get it over with.
Well, the fact that he's open also to, you know, letting these people not only perform in the show, meaning in the television show, but also the idea that they could perform with him at some point in the future. That's a pretty exciting opportunity to find that talent and give them a little showcase. You know, those opportunities are far and harder to find.
Yeah.
And if we had somebody on the show who did a terrible impression, that can be funny in itself. They're thinking it's great. A lot of people do impressions. They think it's right on, and it's not. And they take it seriously. That can be funny, actually. You know? Yeah, you're sort of poking fun at them, but it's hysterical.
Well, the
American
Gong
Idol
Show
has
obviously made a career of bad.
Oh yeah.
Bad was good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was the showcase for bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was going to make a point here. What was it?
Sorry, we have edited.
Oh, like American Idol. I was going to say some of the singers that are auditioning are horrible. Their families there supporting them. They've gone 1,000 miles to be on this show, and then they get up there and they're just god awful. And you think to yourself, why are these people that are around you supporting your effort? Why hasn't anybody told you you're not on key?
It's simple. It's a dream. People have dreams, and it doesn't mean they have the talent. You know, so I had a friend of mine for decades that would, you know, do Sinatra. And I said to him 40 years ago, you've got to give this up, you know. And,
You were the voice of reason.
And he has refused and, you know, never gave it up. It was his dream, and by God, he was going to do Sinatra. And, you know, we had to suffer many times being invited to listen to him do Sinatra, and it was horrifying. So that could be funny, though. But at a certain point, you know, you do have to keep the day job.
Yeah.
You know, and not everybody can make a career out of doing impressions. There are people, by the way, that also, like himself, he can do great singing impressions. It's not just the drawl of John Wayne. I mean, he can do voices, including the performance, and that's another level.
Yeah.
And my mother did that. My mother did Barbra Streisand as good as Streisand, which is hard to imagine. People used to say when she would do the song People, and she would hit the final note, people thought that was a recording or something, but it was really her pulling that off. She couldn't sing like that on her own, just when she was impersonating somebody else. I suspect that happens to you.
If I'm really concentrating becoming Robert Goulet, I can hit a note that Rich Little couldn't hit. Because I'm doing Robert Goulet, I can hit that note because I'm in total concentration.
Is it exhaustive at some point?
Well,
after your show, are you tired?
That's one of the things about doing impressions is be able to hear it while you're doing it. Most people don't hear themselves, you know.
Yeah.
And I had that ability years ago. I can tell you every night when I perform, oh, that's a little off, and that wasn't very good, and you know, I got to get a little deeper, and you know, you know. And so I'm my worst critic.
But think about it like this. He has a certain ability to hear things, but then he can mimic them. This is a rare gift. I can tell you this because I, like him, have suffered through many people saying, can I do my impression for you?
Yeah.
And not everybody hears it. Not everybody can play it back. I may be able to hear a particular person, but the idea that you can record that and then play it back and do it perfectly, that's a rare gift. And it'll be interesting to ferret out those people that really have the gift. It's not as much as you think. Otherwise, you'd see 100 people like him running around.
Something I read in your book. You sometimes start from within the character. You find out who they are. You get into their head a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's how you find the impression sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
Tell me about that process.
You do it from the inside out, you know. You become the person you're doing. Sometimes I get so into doing Johnny Carson that when I leave the stage and go to the dressing room, I find myself writing out an alimony check.
To one of his wives.
Or I do such a great Dean Martin, they have to carry me up to the dressing room, you know. But
That's funny.
yeah, you become the person you're doing. You just, for that time you're doing it, you know, you just put yourself into their world. And
it's funny. I see a metamorphosis when you do this. When you did Jack Nicholson earlier, and when you did Johnny just now. Your face changes. Your eyes look different. There's really something happening there.
He is stepping into there as much as you humanly can. I mean, he looks a little bit like Reagan, you know. So
Your
when he
Reagan
does
is so
Reagan,
spot
it's
on.
like
Well.
ridiculous.
well,
Nancy and I.
Nancy and I. Yes.
But Reagan, of course, is one of the easier ones to do. But he looks like it. It's beyond like I can do a little bit of Reagan, but I can't. He takes on the whole look as well. It changes it all.
That was one in the show. That was one that stood out to me. And then, of course, Nixon. There's something that happens. It's your posture. There's so much involved, it seems.
Well, a lot of it's physical too, you know.
Yeah.
And the physical ones, Jack Benny and Reagan. It helps it if you can look like them, you know. Sometimes I just can do the voice, you know.
Your George Burns is really sharp. I mean,
really
you know, when you break out the glasses and the cigar, and then he changes enough to where it's like, wow, I'm freaking that's George Burns. It's a flash.
Yeah. I have to ask, do you do any impressions?
Me?
Todd? Yeah. Come on.
Well,
impression show.
You know, Nancy and I, well, you know, there's people. I mean, look, Jimmy Stewart was easy to do.
I did the silly version.
My mother is a good way to put it. You know, you can't watch a show 100 million times the way I did as a child and not just hear what she hears. You know, she used to do Barry Fitzgerald. I mean, it's a man.
Oh yeah, she
you know,
did a great Barry Fitzgerald.
And I used to look at her doing it, and I realized that the way she was doing that impression was by underbite, because Barry Fitzgerald had an underbite.
Yeah.
He should spit a little. And she to throw the underbite was what was pulling off the impression. Again, she sort of became Barry Fitzgerald. But
Tell me, Father, do you believe in sex before marriage? Oh, I don't see why not. You know, so long as they don't block the aisle.
see, now he does back to back. That's not easy either. He's got both sides of the script going there.
I could imitate my mother, though, you know.
Okay.
Yes, my mother. That was one of my best impressions, but there was no money in it, you know. But my mother,
she loved it.
And your teacher was the first.
Yeah. But my mother would always phone me after I do an Ed Sullivan show, and I'd say, "What do you think, Mom?" "I didn't like the tie, and that tacky suit has got to go."
That's your mom?
Yeah.
Wow.
What'd you think of the performance? "I didn't notice. I just didn't like the suit."
So, but see, some of that, you know, you spend so much time, you become that person. I had an opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with Jimmy Stewart over the years because of my mother doing How the West Was Won, and they were good friends. And I was sitting with him. We'd filmed a talk show at his home, and we were sitting. I was very careful in the house with my crew not to destroy his house, but unfortunately, we were pulling the cables out, and we broke the louvered blinds in his den. I was mortified, you know, that we had hurt this. But when he comes over to me, he goes, "Oh, that's okay. Come with me." And we take the blinds and we go into his basement. And there I'm sitting in his basement, his little workshop, and we're repairing these blinds, and we're having this little chat. So now I'm thinking, well, I'm really glad we broke these blinds, because this is a golden moment to be able to hang out with Jimmy Stewart in his wood shop putting the blinds back together. So I said to him, I said, you know what? What do you know, you're obviously still sharp. I mean, what are you working on? What are you doing? Of course, I'm sure you hear this too. He was older, I think he was late 80s. He goes, well, I'm all washed up.
He said that?
He said that to me. And I mean, I almost started to cry. I had to hold it back. It's like, what? No, you're no freaking way. But again, you hear that voice. I'm not a great Jimmy Stewart impression, but anybody can do Jimmy Stewart to some degree, because if you just listen to him, he's such a unique twist. The way
he said, Rich, I never realized until I saw you that I talk so slow.
Yes.
I didn't realize it. I talk so slow. I remember one time I was halfway through making a movie and they finished the sequel. Which is a pretty funny line for him.
But there's impressions or impersonations, and then there's that. He's got this thing. I mean, I've been around this my whole life. I'm telling you, this is a rare commodity we're sitting with.
Did we ever get the blinds fixed?
Yeah.
Good.
We did.
Okay.
Dueling Jimmys.
Dueling Jimmys.
Was Harvey there?
Harvey is always there.
That's right. Jimmy always made reference to Harvey like he was walking around. If we walked down the street down to his office on Rodeo Drive, Harvey be walking with us.
He kept
and then when we get on the elevator,
kept it alive.
We got on the elevator would open, and Jimmy would say, the elevator would be full of people, and Jimmy would say, Rich, hold on, Harvey wants to get on first. I'll let Harvey go on. And people were looking like they didn't know what Harvey was or even who Jimmy Stewart was. And who the hell is this? And they're making way for something that isn't there.
He reveled in that role. He truly...
Yeah.
That was like one of those rare times where an actor gets to do something that they love, really love. He loved all of those Capra films, and Harvey.
Harvey said to me, he said, Rich, you know what they call a bunch of rabbits? They're standing in a row and then they suddenly take a step backwards. And I said, no, Jim, what? That's a receding hairline.
Jeez, Reagan would have liked that one.
Reagan would love that one.
That was a good one.
Let me write that down.
Well,
Nancy would get a Secret Service man. I'll write that on his back, and I'll do that for Gorbachev.
Jimmy Stewart, I recall him on Carson reading poetry. That he'd written. And really fun, interesting stuff.
Yeah, clever.
At the time, he was already dated, and yet it was just brilliant. It didn't matter what age you were, you enjoyed it. And he had just a little wacky side to him as well, I guess.
Yeah.
You got to know him fairly well. You'd see each other regularly at benefits and things, you said.
Yeah, I remember I said to him, I used to go and see him on weekends. He lived over in Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. And I said, Jim, you're not in a gated community. No. I said, anybody could just walk up to your front door. Well, they do. And I said, wow, no privacy at all. He said, yeah, last weekend, a family pulled up in a truck, and they got out, and they put a blanket down, and they proceeded to have a picnic on my lawn. And they brought out chicken and wine and salad and everything. I said, what'd you tell him to get the hell out of there? Oh, no, Rich, I couldn't do that. Looked like a nice family. I said, did you phone the police? No, not really. So you did nothing? Well, no, not really. I just wandered around the back of the house and turned the sprinklers on. It's amazing how fast they were getting out of there. We had chicken left over for about a week. But he loved to tell that story, probably based on something that happened, Yeah.
Did you remember when we had this big earthquake in California, and he bought the house next door, right on the corner of Hillcrest and
That's right,
Rodeo.
he did, yes.
And they tore it down, and they turned it into a vegetable garden.
That's right.
So imagine a piece of Beverly Hills real estate, and they tore it down, and his wife planted raised vegetable gardens in the back. I mean, That's pretty funny. And that's how down to earth they were. They didn't think anything of it, right? It was just like, we're growing vegetables and we don't want that house there anyway.
That's so funny. Same area you grew up in, right?
So I lived down the street. So my best friend was Miguel Ferrer. He lived almost across the street. Jose Ferrer, Rosemary Clooney, and they were just cattywampus. Jimmy was across the street from Lucille Ball and Peter Falk, all on right there on Roxbury. It was not Rodale, Roxbury.
Yep.
And so that street was frequented. We terrorized the neighborhood pretty good. We didn't bother Mr. Stewart though, because you know he was family. I mean,
your next door neighbors though, when you'd have the explosions in the backyard. I've been reading your book as well.
Well, yeah. So the Sarnoffs, the guys that started RCA, you know, we as I got a little more advanced in my filmmaking, our special effects were evolving, and we lost control of some of our special effects at times. And yes, the embers from our sets landed on their roof, and we had trouble with the Beverly Hills police. And you know, we weren't really mischievous. We were just seeking to improve the realism in our films that we were working on, and the films didn't really have to have much of a plot. It was more just about action.
Yeah.
You know.
I want to get into this. I want to talk to you more about this.
That's another.
But I do want to ask you, some of the people he impersonates were the people that frequented your home.
Oh, yeah.
Parties with your mother. I mean, we talk Groucho Marx, Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, this is why I like watching him. It's like having a flashback to my old days. Even when I went and saw his show, some of those people I just loved. It did bring them back. It does bring them back. And so, I mean, yes, Groucho was one of my mom's favorites. He was a lot of our parties when I was growing up, and he held court, you know, in the house.
If he was in a party, he was the focal point.
Well, no, I mean,
the life of the party.
house was big enough, but he had an area and everybody gravitated, and there was always a sort of a group of people around him while he held court. I mean, it would be the same today if you had him at the party, because there would be a certain amount of people who just sit and want to hear his stories. And Groucho, of course, was one of the best ad-libbers of all time. And sharp.
Did you know him?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh.
You didn't?
No, never.
But you do a hell of an impression.
No. But Frank Sinatra didn't like him.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. They made a movie together, and Frank told me that he didn't like Groucho's personality. Thought he was kind of snobby. So I don't know.
He probably the wrong party. You had to come to our party because he was funny as hell. I mean, and the kids, you know, he was cool with us kids being around. He would include us. You know, if you were truly like, you know, a standoffish person, you know, you would. And there were plenty of those people at some of the parties. You know, they want to give us kids the time of day, and you know,
children.
You'll appreciate that. I mean, there are a lot of people in Hollywood that become stars, and then they can catch an attitude because they're a star. All of a sudden they're something special, and the world adores them, and it goes to their head. You know, my mother was never like that. She always retained her down-to-earth connection, and that she was a regular person. Yes, she performed and did these things, but she was always one of us. And I appreciate that when I find, you know, people like Rich and others that are very down-to-earth, and even though they have extremely high levels of talent, you know, they are still one of us. And you know, there are plenty in Hollywood that don't. My mother used to, as she became famous, you know, she would actually correct some of those people that were coming up and say, hey, you know, drop the attitude.
Who didn't she like? Do we say? Do we say?
She was pretty candid in her book too. I think there's some you could talk about, right?
Well, I don't know if I should. I mean, it's really more her place to say. But yes, there were people that she used to say, you know, you should probably get into another line of work, and they'd be like, what?
Oh, that's funny.
And she'd say, look, if you're not going to appreciate your fans and make time for your fans, then you really should get into another line of work, because that's what comes with it.
Yeah.
You're nothing without them. I think that was some solid advice, you know. And you know, my sister, as she became famous in her own right through Star Wars, felt the intrusion and the loss. We already had a massive loss of privacy in our world. Carrie used to say our family has to wear its underwear on the outside of our clothes, because literally everything we did was in the public eye. So as she became famous, that got even worse. Now on her own little private life became smaller and smaller. And so she started to be affected by it. And, you know, my mother once again stepped in, but she had trained us all along, but stepped in to remind her now she had a direct responsibility to her fans, and Carrie embraced it her whole life. You know, she was very available. Very rarely did you ever see Carrie blow somebody off. You know, she was like my mom. My mother, no matter what, I mean, sure you remember this about her, no matter who came up, she had a moment with them. She would take that time. And that's important for people that are stars to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've witnessed that with you. Yeah, you're very kind to your audience.
He stands in line and meets everybody and listens to every story. That's old school Hollywood. Old school showbiz.
Sometimes I pretend I'm listening.
Yes, well, that's a separate issue. That. By the way, that doesn't matter. That's not what's important is they say, don't you remember you met me in Cincinnati backstage in 1976? Right. And he'll go, yes, that's great.
And they nod and say, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah,
you're the one that bought the program, right? And I signed it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The book. It was the book, not the program.
And then people will say to you, I knew you when you lived in Ottawa, Canada. And I said, really? Yeah, we went to a Glebe Collegiate together. I said, no, I never went to Glebe. Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I did.
That happens to my mom because they're not sure if she went to Burbank High or Burroughs High. They're very close together. And I've had everybody say, oh, I went to school with your mother. At this point, I just let it roll. As far as I'm concerned, she graduated from both places.
Let them have it.
Have it. Leave it alone. You went to school with them.
All right, so let's talk about this contest. So people are going to send in a video, and then we're going to judge these videos. We'll show a few on the air on one of the upcoming episodes of the Vegas Young Show. But one of these people are going to be chosen to literally come on stage with you and do their act. A couple of minutes on stage.
Sure.
You're okay with that?
That'd be fine.
All right.
You got them cornered now.
Fine.
I can't say no.
And if they're really good, they'll fire me and hire them.
Or you'll produce them.
I think that's a really good idea. A great way also to start a show. You know, shows are a funny thing. You know, there's a million shows that come and go. And how does a show actually become a show in Hollywood? And nobody can really answer that question and with any serious clarity. There's a gazillion ways that it happens. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's you have a great showrunner that has a lot of clout. Other times things just fall into place a certain way. We don't even know at this moment how this will evolve or where it will eventually go. So we have sort of a unique concept here, which is just sort of, let's just move the ball forward, start making the elements of the show, which would normally be called like a pitch reel, but the pitch reel actually becomes the show, and even so much as what they might be doing with him live would be part of it. I think that's an interesting, different way to see how a show starts.
And I can't wait to see the variety of talent that's out there unseen. Nobody knows
we'll
about.
get people like Dana Carvey and Gordie Brown and maybe myself and a couple of females, you know.
Yeah,
they're the best judges of this, obviously.
I just love the idea of your traditional way of impersonation compared to somebody like Jim Carrey, who's more over the top.
Well, we might have to have a younger judge on because there may be somebody that does some impressions that I don't even know who they are. You know, some of the rock stars, I would be. I wouldn't be able to judge it at all. You know,
especially since rock stopped 20 years ago. So,
well,
exactly the point, though. That's exactly the point. Even I am completely out of it. My wife is one of the experts of knowing all the names of everybody. And I'm like, I have no clue who she's talking about half the time with a lot of the younger performers, younger acts. It's like the hip hop acts. Can you name a hip hop act? I mean,
no.
It's like, you know what I'm saying? Yet that's the biggest form of dance and that type of. So you know, addressing that's going to be kind of interesting. I don't know how you would do an impression of somebody.
Well, we shall see.
We shall see. I think you're right, though. That's part of what we need to find also, though, is that a young celebrity that is in touch with some of those newer.
You also mentioned somebody like an actor who does impressions. Daniel Day-Lewis. Everybody talks about him. His are the best in the world, from what everybody says. Who knows?
Could be. He's certainly up there high on the list.
Has anybody ever asked you to coach them, an actor, on doing somebody else?
Have me teach them how to do a voice?
Yeah. Has anybody ever come to you for advice?
I'm going to ask him how to tune up my Jimmy Stewart and my Ronald Reagan later. But for now, he means a celebrity, though.
Like somebody that's going to do a role and they have to impersonate somebody famous. Have they ever reached out to you for advice?
I remember when the movie Nixon was being made with Anthony Hopkins,
Yes.
right? He invited me down to the set. Maybe I could give him a few tips on how to do Nixon. Well, I went down to the set and met Oliver Stone and stood around the background, but I didn't need to say anything. Anthony Hopkins was brilliant.
Yeah,
How are you going to tell Anthony Hopkins how to do a scene? You know, I thought he did a pretty good Nixon, you know.
It's very subtle. Yeah.
And but I was thrilled that he wanted me to come down, and you know, I went to see Bryan Cranston do LBJ in New York on the stage, and that was brilliant too. And the only thing I told him when you do LBJ is to take your glasses and put them down at the tip of your nose and kind of squint your eyes and do, you know, Lyndon Johnson like that. You know,
Good old
and
boy.
he did that. He actually did that. And
Very cool.
you know, little tips like that. But I mean, I'm not going to tell these great actors how to play a part. I mean,
But what they're doing is similar to what he did. The observation skill of a great actor to look at the character and the facial expressions and the mannerisms and to absorb those and to play them back the way he does.
Yeah.
That is what a great actor is wanting to do
Yes.
if they're trying to recreate that moment.
I agree.
Well, yeah. Well, a lot of people that play, you know, important people on the screen are not impersonators, but they probably work at it and you know, watch a lot of film clips, and you know, it might surprise you. You know, if you study somebody long enough, you can usually pull it off. You know, if you have any kind of ability at all.
Wonderful. Well, listen, my guests have been Todd Fisher. Thank you for stepping in here and talking with us a little bit, and we'll get back to you on another
anything
day.
for him, because I admire him in a major way. Same way with my mom. The great talent, and we need to appreciate him while we have him.
Agreed.
Thank you, Todd. Your mother was one of the all-time greats. A lot of great memories with her. Wow.
Rich Little. We'll see you next week.
We'll let you.
I want to thank you for watching the Vegas Young Show. If you think you have an impersonation, an impression of a famous celebrity that you kill with in your parties at home with your friends, okay, maybe you could do Lilo instead.
Hey everybody, it's me. Maybe you could do a voice like this.
It doesn't matter what kind of voice you do. Maybe you do Jack Nicholson, like, hey everybody, it's me, Jack. Whatever you do, if you think it's good, send it in to info@vegasyoung.com and we will present it to Rich Little himself. If he likes it, if he thinks you're good, you might find yourself on a stage in Las Vegas with Rich, and maybe on his new show, which is going to air sometimes in 2025, we're hoping. Let's see what happens. But send it in. I'm happy to report that Rich Little is still alive and well. He's still impersonating people all across America. I highly recommend his show. It's a walk down memory lane with one of the icons of a generation that is known as the golden age in American cinema. So enjoy that, and we'll see you next time.